Hello and welcome to Cinema Gulp today. This is John.
And this is Ben.
And today we're going to do a quick shot review for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
You're an interesting man, Mr. Scamander. Just like your suitcase, I think there's much more to you than meets the eye. Kicked out of Hogwarts for endangering human life with a beast. Yet one of your teachers argued strongly against your expulsion.
The cinematic and literary culture of wizards, witches, goblins, and more have usually been a variation of textured gothic imagery, interesting characters, even more interesting mythology, and of course, magic. The Harry Potter books and films perfectly represented those elements while also adding humor, adventure, character development, and modern relevance. J.K. Rowling is a master at fantasy fiction novels. She blends the best of the genre together, even adding bits and pieces to the potion, and completely sets the bar. Now we have this first film of the new addition to the Potterverse that J.K. Rowling not only produced, but wrote the screenplay for as well. Fantastic Beasts felt much less like a film that belongs in the Potterverse. Sure, there were small mentions of a few things, but all in all, this could have been a completely separate entity having nothing to do with the previous stories.
What did you think of Newt Skiningridge? What was his fucking name?
Scallymander?
What did you think of Newt Scallymander in the world of crazy monsters?
Well, Newt Scallymander himself, the character, was terrible. This is what hurts this film for me. I was not a big fan of Fantastic Beasts. I like all the Harry Potter movies, some better than others. Usually it comes down to who's directing, and that's what I found interesting about the Harry Potter movies. The change of directors along the way made those films fresh and unique at times, and then they got bland at the end when David Yates took over, and this is another David Yates film, and so it fits with the Harry Potter films. I think visually it looks great. I do like the world that's on display, the New York wizarding world. The movie itself had a convoluted plot, and the characters, just not a single one of these characters really came to life for me, and I found that to be a really big problem because the Harry Potter movies, every character they introduced right from the first film all the way through to the end, almost every character owned it, was interesting, was fun to watch, had me wanting to see them in the next film and continue on, and this film just lacked any characters that I could really get behind and enjoy.
I totally agree with you, first off, that Newt Scallywag, or whatever his name is a terrible lead character, especially when you're trying to restart a franchise that has these amazing characters from film 1/book, whatever, all the way to the last one. And all they did was get better and grow. I know this is one movie, but if you're planning on making a bunch of movies with Newt Gingrich, or whatever his name is, what is his name? I don't even know. Okay, I thought it was almost like Skywalker. It's like, really? JK, is that really? It was almost like Skywalker. You had said that you kind of liked how they created this like New York Wizarding World. I thought it was really weak, and it was confusing because there was this one really interesting shot where they go into what's sort of like the Ministry of Magic of New York, and it looks great, and it's got this really cool kind of interesting clock thing, and then this alert danger type of scale, and then it's never made mention of, and you have no fucking clue what it means. The set design is really great in this building, but the building's never used the way something like Hogwarts was, or that's kind of an unfair comparison, but even like the Ministry, when they finally start showing scenes in the Ministry, it's very interesting, and it's very detailed, and when they're walking around it, and here's what this does, and here's what that does. This kind of set that up, and then it never did anything with it.
Yeah, no, I actually didn't find the Wizarding World of New York interesting.
Sorry.
I was just happy to, like, it was cool to see this on screen. Like, this is the movie that they're presenting to us, so I was in for whatever they were going to do, but I don't think they did much with it. Like, it came across as dull.
That's the thing. Yeah, it didn't. Granted, they're not using a backdrop of a school to have a setup, so it's like the entire city of New York. But I was just like you. I was very confused by the plot because the movie's title is a very small element of the film. It's sort of the setup as to why our main character's in New York City, but it's more of the cartoonish aspect, and it's more of the stuff that I enjoyed. When it got into the, here's the dark plot that there's got to be some kind of villain. It can't just be him running around chasing beasts. That wouldn't satisfy enough people. the overall like little dark plot I just wasn't following or caring about that much.
No, I'm right there with you. The villains were weak. They weren't explained at all. There's a couple different villains in it, and they were all kind of confusing. Their motivations, who they really were. I just didn't find it interesting. And I think you pointed out the finale ends up with kind of just a weak mishmash of effects being thrown at you. You don't really know what's going on exactly. You don't really know why it's all going on. And it was a weak ending. I didn't find any of this movie interesting, but I could have fun at times, occasionally, like you said. But those scenes did play out a little bit childishly, too. Now, I know these films the Harry Potter films started as kids' films, and they got a little bit darker and more mature as they went along. And that was actually really nice with the Harry Potter films, as watching the characters mature. Harry Potter films was actually the real boyhood. We got to watch that kid grow up over 10 movies or whatever it was, actually age with the character and mature with the character. And that was great. That was really interesting and done well. For 10 movies or 8 movies or whatever the fuck it is. But I don't give a shit about 5 more movies with Newt fucking Scumbag. This guy is not interesting at all. And Eddie Redmayne did an excellent job playing Stephen Hawking. I thought he was great. But now I'm starting to question how great that performance was, because I'm seeing shades of that performance here in Newt Scumbag, and his delivery, the way he delivers these breathy lines of dialogue and can't make eye contact. I thought that was just something he was doing for some of these earlier roles to help make them interesting, different characters. Now I'm seeing it in every role that he plays.
Yeah. This movie starts out very, I don't want to just say slow and dry and bland, but it's really sort of motionless. Nothing's happening, and there's like maybe like a setup here or there for some kind of thing to start, or like a joke that might happen, and nothing seems to actually play out. And I just remember thinking, oh my god, like this is so bad. Like nothing in this universe should start this boring as this movie. I mean, and I'm not saying that as like there's a bunch of people saying brainy things setting up some plot. There was nothing happening. Like when they show you Eddie Redmayne, that could not be less cinematic of an entrance, because he doesn't say anything, and you're right, he won't look anybody in the eye, and that's just his character. And it's like, okay, so we have to follow this dude like through this whole movie. It barely feels like it's in the same universe. It just barely hangs on there. They're not yelling out the spells when they're using their wands.
That was one thing that I was hoping for more of, was like when they introduced that there was a different name for non-magic using people in America than what they use in Britain. More of those little things where we saw the difference of what the British wizarding world is and what the American wizarding world is. They didn't really establish enough of those differences, or even, as you pointed out, some of the similarities that we would have liked to have seen.
Character-wise, this movie was terrible. The beauty of the Harry Potter, every one of the films, even the ones that weren't as great as the others, there's no Harry Potter movie that I hate. Every one of them had amazing characters. And yes, they were written from books. But this is J.K. Rowling who wrote the screenplay to this movie. She knows how to write characters. I'm starting to wonder, does she know how to write American characters? But Newt is a Brit, and he's the worst character in the movie, and he's the main character in the movie. She did happen to write in a good character, which was Dan Folger's character. And he's one of the highlights of the movie, barely because of Dan Folger, mostly because it was interesting, a lukewarm, interesting character written in a sea of terrible, bland characters.
He's occasionally a scene stealer, but only because everybody around him is so weak.
Probably my biggest positive is in going into this movie and looking at the trailers, I was a little bit worried, because you were mentioning how when David Yates took over Harry Potter, they did kind of get a little less magical and a little more kind of dry, and I know that they were supposed, it was the dark period when things, the dark before the dawn or whatever, but I never ever liked the photography. I always thought it was very dark when he came in and who he brought in for those last 4 movies. It was way too dark, especially the 5th one. This movie did not have that cinematographer. This movie actually had a guy named Philippe Rosalat, but he's actually done Big Fish, Interview with the Vampire, the Sherlock Holmes movie, The Nice Guys. He's a good cinematographer, and you could tell this movie it popped a lot more than those last couple Harry Potter movies did.
Yeah, it wasn't as dark and dour in the cinematography. Storytelling-wise and some of the dark moments in this film, I did think there were some serious kind of dark moments that definitely weren't for kids.
It was a much more adult, darker story. There's some creepy shit.
Yeah.
I really did enjoy, and I have yet to dislike any score from anything in this franchise, and this was James Newton Howard's first time at it, and I thought he killed it. It was awesome.
I like the production design. I thought was pretty good in the film. I think the effects, there's some effects that work really well that do seem kind of believable, but there's kind of an overuse of effects. There's so many little moments of magic where things are floating around and supposed to levitate, and none of that stuff has a real weight or gravity to it. It just really looks fake on screen. A lot of the fantastic beasts of the film, even though they look cool, they're kind of unique looking creatures that we maybe haven't seen before, not all of them, but they do look like digital creations on screen, and the interaction of the real actors and these creatures rarely looks that believable to me.
Yeah, some of the larger ones and some of the really, really small ones just don't, they didn't spend enough time crafting those to look realistic, and that's such a shame, because this movie's called Fantastic Fucking Beasts. You know, you're expecting that's where the money goes, and unfortunately, since we don't, without giving away a lot of the details of the movie, it ends up going towards this ridiculous, overblown Avengers ending that doesn't belong in a Harry Potter movie. I wanted to see, and I gotta admit, everything that has to do with his briefcase and stuff like that is my favorite stuff of the film. When it gets to the point where we do actually see a lot of these beasts and we're being told about them and stuff, I liked that. And I wanted that to be the movie. I wanted that to be more and more of the movie. Unfortunately, you kind of just get the explanation and then the movie goes in other directions. And then the blend of a lot of the really dark, disturbing stuff, it kind of didn't mix with the Fantastic Beasts, because they almost look like big shiny cartoons, like you said, you know? So I get it, you're trying to add the levity, and then you're trying to be like, hey, we're more like the darker Harry Potter ones because these are all adults, there's no kids. But it just, the balance of it was off.
Yeah, I think the Harry Potter films, they had the luxury of having the kids, the setting of a school, and this large cast of children, so they could have more levity, more childlike wonder scenes, and really just childish moments play out.
I think it's a really good book, and that it inspires kids to have a great imagination.
Mixed in with the serious, darker stuff, the Voldemort stuff, people getting murdered eventually. Like, they were able to mix both those together because of the cast they had, the setting they had, the story they were telling.
I don't want to blame it on the fact that it's in New York and it's in America, because it could have been great if it was that. It seemed to not really matter. It's almost like he could have been anywhere.
I think it could have been in England or anywhere else. It really didn't matter.
It didn't really matter, and I get it. They wanted to do that because Americans were like, oh, we're never at Hogwarts. And then they make that little joke that was kind of chuckly, I guess.
Part of what made the Harry Potter films great was that every film was a different year at school, and that gave a structure for the film. It gave a template for each film, and then you can mix in a different adventure each time into that and expand the story. But I don't give a shit about any of these characters that are going to go on this 5-film adventure. I'm done with it already.
He's such a strange character. He's like a 2-year-old kid strapped in like a 30-year-old's body. I really don't know where this series would go. I guess this one wrapped up, but it just to me, I'm disappointed because I really wanted to be excited walking out of that. I liked it more than you did. I fell into it after I told you I couldn't stand the first 35 minutes. I really did get involved in the adventure of it, but still, there's something holding me back, and it had a lot to do with the characters, and then it had a lot to do with story progression and where things went and when it decided to check back in with who. It was a mess, but I was trying to give it the benefit of the doubt the whole movie. But in the end, I'm here right now saying it was a big mess, but maybe with a little bit of magic, we can make the next couple ones better. They could have replaced their wands with guns, and this just could have been like a movie. Yeah, this could have been like R.I.P.D.
Let's learn you a few things about Old West fighting.
Could have.
Oh my god.
Just put Jeff Bridges in there.
I don't know if it's that bad.
No, it's not. No, it's not that bad, but it's just the magic element was such a small piece in comparison to the actual Harry Potter movies.
I mean, it is an unfair comparison to say that because this isn't the same as the Harry Potter movies, it's a failure. Because the Harry Potter movies did have, like you said, they're created from a book. So there's a lot more mythology and wealth of information to pull from to create the screenplay for that first film.
And this was much, much shorter than any Harry Potter movie, except maybe the fifth, which was the shortest one. whether you're like an adult now who grew up watching or reading Harry Potter books, or you're a kid now watching this movie. What I mean by kid is someone age appropriate to go see this film.
The second one was the worst. I like the third one. Yeah, we liked it, but the third one was the best. I like the third one.
The one thing I never wanted to say about a Harry Potter movie was that the producers, and maybe even Rowling, I hope she doesn't kill me because I think she's brilliant, this whole process was very perfunctory in a way, where it seems like there could have been more TLC. Whether you love those movies or not, and you saw them as a kid or an adult, you should always go into these movies hoping for something magical and crazy, and if you can find a little bit of something like that in there, that's great. But you should never have to look as hard as you did to find something like that as you do in this movie. So for the audience chuggability of Fantastic Beasts and where to find them, I would probably have to put this right on the border, because this is for what the audience would think of it. I guess I'm going to have to give the slight edge to Thirst Quencher.
For audience chuggability, what I think the audience can get out of this, at least a thirst quenching. I think especially Harry Potter fans, you know, they're going to be there to check it out. They're going to enjoy the little connections that it has to the other films. So I think it's thirst quenching for the Harry Potter audience.
And for my personal gulp gauge, this was a very, very uneven movie. A lot of very boring stuff and a lot of really fun stuff. A lot of visually entertaining things, and then a lot of visually unsatisfactory type of things that just didn't work out. It's very uneven. I'm going to have to give it a 5.5.
And I'm going to give it a 4. I really wanted more out of this. I mean, the Harry Potter series has come to represent a certain level of storytelling and acting, and this one just didn't meet that.
Okay, everybody, thanks so much. That's our quick shot review of Fantastic Things and Where They Go, or objects of... So, as always, if you like this review, please give us a comment down in the comment section below. Check us out on Twitter and Facebook at Cinema Gulp. For Cinema Gulp, this has been...
And this is John. Really quick, are there any Australian or New Zealand actors in this film that we can highlight?
Oh no, Will Ferrell. Colin Farrell's Irish. Yeah. So we'll have to just hashtag Ireland now and see what happens.
We'll give it a try.
We definitely won't hashtag England after all the shit we talked on Eddie Redmayne. We drink your cinema.
I drink it up!